Welcome to Out of the Question, a podcast that looks behind some common questions and uncovers the question behind the question while providing real solutions for biblical world and life view. Your host is Andrea Schwartz, a teacher and mentor and founder of the Chalcedon Teacher Training Institute.
Hello, this is Andrea Schwartz again, and today I'm going to ask the question, can a homeschooling mother create a successful business? Well, my guest today will answer this question. Leah McHenry is a wife and mother who continues to homeschool her 5 children. Her story is about learning how, by using proper principles of marketing, she could start and run a successful business. But I should add, not just one business, but 3, all while continuing to do the things that a wife and mother needs to do. So, Leah, thanks for joining me today.
Hey, Andrea, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
You know, it was back in 2014 when I first interviewed you, and your circumstances were quite a bit different than they are now. So why don't you share that?
Oh, yeah. Back in 2014, I was going through the Institutes for Biblical Law, the Institutes class, and that's how we really kind of came to know each other better. And at the time, I was just really in the throes of having babies and just the, nursing and being up in the night and all of that. And then I also had this little hobby on the side, which was my music career, just as a recording artist. And since 2012, I had really started pursuing this, mostly just because I really just felt compelled as an artist to release music. And because I was married and in the middle of having a family and my kids were so young, touring was not really an option for me. So I had to start figuring out, well, how can I get my music out there without touring? And so what happened was I realized after trying to study the music industry that they didn't really have any good answers that would apply to me. And I ended up completely stopping studying the music industry, and I instead started focusing on online marketing. And because I saw these online businesses doing very well, and I thought, well, they're selling stuff online, so why can't I? So that's what I started studying. And by 2014, I was starting to bring in a little bit of income from my music recordings and just selling music and a little bit of merchandise online. And that snowballed into creating an academy. At the very end of 2015 is when I launched it. It was called Savvy Musician Academy. And the whole focus on that academy is teaching other independent musicians how they can market their music online, without a label and maybe without touring as well, just like I had been doing. And so that took off. Like, I had no plans to really do anything other than help bring in more income into our family, because we were just really struggling. We were struggling so badly, especially with the taxes in Canada. They're so high. And of course, like the middle income, middle class and lower middle class, we just get hit so hard. And so I was just kind of desperate trying to help create that income, and my music was taking off a bit. But that academy, it completely snowballed, and we were at a 7-figure level within I believe it was 6 months. So that was a shock, a complete shock. I mean, it was like, pinch me, is this even real? And actually, we've had business mentors since then who you'd think that you had won the lottery or something, like that's how it would feel, but that's not actually the case. It was stressful.
No, I definitely understand that. You talk to anybody, whether it's an athlete or anybody in business, sometimes success can be way more stressful than failure.
Yeah. And I think, when I talk to entrepreneurs, their number one fear is not really of failure, it's of success, which is, you don't really understand why are people afraid of success? And I think that they're afraid to lose it all. And I had that moment too, when we hit that first success. It was a very strange feeling, almost ominous. Like I could, if it came this fast, it could also go away that fast. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so it was a very strange place to be. And I was like, okay, what is God trying to teach us here? And so because also when that kind of success comes at you, you now are being thrown into a whole new level of responsibility. And it was like the fast track to level up in our own personal development, our financial management, just suddenly having to be a leader, suddenly having to hire people and train people and having never had done that before. Just this whole new world. Plus, having like an information education product online, you're really throwing yourself out there, and you've got the trolls, you have the skeptics, you have all the fun stuff that comes with being on the internet. And wow, it was so overwhelming to just have that happen so fast.
All right, so let's backtrack a little bit, because a lot of the people who listen, not all, but a lot, are homeschooling families. And the tendency is to think when they hear or someone hears your story that it's like, well, she just must be exceptional. I could never do that. She must be superwoman. And then, of course, you'll have the skeptics. Well, how well are her children educated? But I think, having been a homeschooling mom for as long as I actually was an active homeschool mom for 30 years. There's something about the mindset that says you're even going to take on that task that helps you pursue and research things. So it really doesn't surprise me that with some study, you figured out how to do it, because that's kind of what homeschooling is about. Oftentimes, the homeschooling parent is teaching herself as she's teaching her children.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Now that you brought that up, when I think back, I think that homeschool families already have an advantage in that they have to be self-starters. They have to be self-motivated, and they're willing to learn anything that they need to learn and not have somebody have to stand there and tell them what to do, which already, like 98% of the population doesn't do anything unless they're told what to do, right, like by the government or by here's the public school system. Here's what you have to learn. Just go through the machine. Whereas, entrepreneurialism by nature is extremely independent, extremely like we're trailblazers, right? And nobody's standing there when you wake up in the day, nobody's telling me what my schedule needs to be. I have to come up with that and be a self-starter and a self-learner. And actually, so that's where I think entrepreneurialism is so strong in homeschool families, is because also, with kids, like in our family, right now we're doing a lot more of interest-based learning, and our kids are having to learn to manage their time and manage what they're learning, and we're monitoring that and guiding that. But we never had that in public school or even in private school. Everything was kind of dictated to us. And so I think you get to adulthood and you're almost anxious. It's like this, like, what do I do with my life? I just think it's going to be a lot less the case with our kids and other homeschool families. Like they already know how to manage their life a little bit. So,
absolutely. I've talked to professors in colleges, and they've said they can always tell the students that were homeschooled because they know how to learn and they don't have to be babysat as much as the others, and some who even come from private schooling education. But I think my greatest awareness of the homeschooling mindset, and mind you, mine is most influenced by my exposure with Christian homeschoolers, is that if there's a problem, whether it's a medical problem with one of their children or a learning problem with one of their children, or like you said, we have to do something because financially we've got to make all this work, there's the underpinning that says there's going to be a solution because God is faithful.
Yeah. Absolutely. And those problem-solving skills have all the makings of a very good business. So, that's one thing we've really learned since then too, is like you said, if you've got a medical problem or any kind of problem, like I think one thing that an advantage we have as homeschool families is we know how to research. We can research anything and find answers pretty easily. And then we know how to take action based off of that research. I think most of the population has no clue how to even look up anything outside of just the first 5 listings in Google.
Right. And oftentimes, the more research you do, the more you get contrary opinions and perspectives. And a lot of people will say, well, I get so frustrated when I research because I get all these different opinions. Well, that's great because then as you piece all the things together, you actually get to formulate your own opinion.
Yes, exactly. And in today's political climate and everything, it's really important that we're doing all that research because, as you know, you type something into Google and they've got very filtered answers for you.
Yes.
So we, teaching kids about that and going deeper and, hey, we need to do our own fact checking, right? Not the Google fact checking or Facebook fact check. We need to do our own by going deeper, go to other sources and all of that. So I think we definitely have that advantage.
So let's get back to your journey. So first it was the music that, and I know that you do everything with your music. You may get some other people to help or guide you in it, but you mix the music, you write the lyrics, you do all the necessary editing. How does somebody who's got not one, but 5 kids who you're responsible for and a husband, how do you figure out how to partition your time?
I'm still trying to figure that one out. I'm definitely far from, I don't have it all together when it comes to that. But most of all, I think my philosophy is I really work in seasons. And so I'm not always writing albums and focusing on all my businesses hardcore all the time. What I do is I have seasons of writing, seasons of album launching, and then I take a break from that. So in 2020, I took a complete break from my music career. I didn't even send my fans emails. I told them why and that I was going to be putting my focus on a different brand, a new brand that I built, which is a candle business of all things. It's kind of a sister brand to my music, all fantasy-based candles. So I really am intentional about what I'm working on. And then also there's real freedom in building a team. And so my candle business is now at the point where we scaled from, making candles in my kitchen, my kids helping, to 15 employees. And we were hiring during the pandemic. Everybody else was shutting down and letting people go. We were hiring. And so we've got a team of 15, and having really competent people in place frees my time up significantly. So I'm still coming to the meetings. We're making high level decisions, but then I'm only working on that business maybe 5 hours a week tops, and on just the important stuff. There's a real freedom to delegating. My kids, I delegate a lot of the household chores. I don't remember the last time I did laundry. Quite frankly, it's been years because my kids do it.
Right.
So they have a lot of responsibility. I don't remember the last time I unloaded the dishwasher because my kids do it. Right. So they've got a lot, and that we hold them responsible for. And so that definitely takes care of a lot of just the household stuff. And so Steve and I take turns cooking with the kids. So everybody cooks, we're all doing that, kind of sharing that responsibility. And then they have a lot of responsibility this year with their education, because they're really a lot more in charge of what's going on with that. And they're a little older now too. So my oldest is turning 15, and that changes things too. It was different when they were little. You have to really adapt and adjust based on the ages of your kids.
Mm-hmm. So a lot of people think that children should be children, don't give them responsibilities. They only have their childhood once. But first of all, that's a rather new concept in the history of the world. But my experience is when you make your children work and the mundane, menial things, some of them come up with the idea that when they're older, they're going to make enough money so that somebody else can do this for them, which is fine. And others just know how to do it, whether or not they ever have to do those things. But having them involved in the business or helping the business operate by doing other things, to me, seems like a tremendous education.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if I had a farm, they'd be working on the farm right now, but we don't have a farm. We have an online business. So, they're helping out in different ways. And even at the beginning of my candle business, which also went to 7 figures in a very short amount of time, about 9 months in 2020, they were in the kitchen with us. They were making the candles, and that was sometimes their school for the day. It was like, hey, we have this huge pre-order that just happened. Everybody, all hands on deck. Everybody's helping. They're helping packing, shipping, And so they're really learning a whole lot via osmosis. And even just this morning, we have like a little formal morning time where we study whatever it is we want to study. So I'm usually reading to them. We're reading through C.S. Lewis right now. And then I was taking them through a course called $1 Million Brand. And so they're learning stuff that they would never, ever, ever learn in a public school setting, or even in, it's just, that's the type of family we are. So they're just getting this totally interesting education that I never would have imagined even 5 years ago. But they learn so much via osmosis, and then they're putting in work in a different way.
Right. And I don't think by the time they get to decide what their life calling is, and we're going to talk about calling in a bit, but that it's not like in your household, they only have to do your business. You're actually helping them explore lots of different avenues so that they can make those kinds of responsible decisions as they get older.
Yeah, I feel really strongly about that too. So, I mean, being in any household, I think you're going to take on a bit of what your parents are all about. I mean, that's going to be a bit of the culture of the home, but that's why we're encouraging interest-led learning right now. I mean, they all have the basics, but outside of that, we really want them to pursue passions and figure out what their giftings and callings are, because that's what we want to help them do. And if it ends up that they become entrepreneurs like us, cool. If not, that's totally fine. So we just want to encourage them to be what God has called them to be, whatever that is.
So let's talk about calling, because I'm sure there are people who are listening to this and say, well, I mean, we could do what they're doing, but we just don't have good ideas. Or, I don't know, I'm just an ordinary person. How would you coach somebody into finding the frame of mind, finding the thing that would be the right fit for them and their family?
In regards to finding a business?
Yeah, if that's what they wanted to do. If they said, like, especially since everybody's been spending a lot of time with each other the past year, maybe people might be hesitant saying, oh, we're always together. Things were better when my husband went off to work, but now he's working from home. So how would people say, okay, let's pursue this entrepreneurial thing? What would be your advice as to how they would get started?
Man, if you're starting from scratch and just wondering what direction to take, that's a big one. I would probably be looking at, their existing skill set, their existing interests and passions, and like, what's the big problem that they could solve in the world? Our candles, for example, they don't really solve a problem. It's more that they bring joy to really nerdy people. And so that's actually our mission for the company, is we bring happiness to fantasy nerds. That is our mission. So it could either solve a problem or bring joy to people. But I would look at, like, is there something you already have an affinity for? Are you your own target market for something that is a need or a strong desire? And then I would start taking a look at that audience. And so something I've learned over the years is, you don't launch products, you launch to audiences. And because if you have a specific audience that is really passionate about something or really trying to solve a specific problem, that will dictate what the product is, and even the series of products or the product line. So it's really going to come down to which audience, which person can you really help? And so that should help get them brainstorming.
All right. If you wouldn't mind, give an example of the wrong way to do it, focusing on a product as opposed to an audience.
Okay, so let's say I just decide to start making soap at home, and I'm just going to make what makes me happy. I'm going to make what makes me happy and then put it on Etsy and hope that it sells. That would be the wrong way to do it. That's the way 95% of people do it. So instead, you should spend a good amount of time researching who is fanatical about X, Y, and Z topic. Like, the more fanatical and passionate the audience is, the easier it is for you. So you want to research that audience. So there's a fair amount of research involved. And I definitely have some specific methods that I teach about. So I spend time a lot in the researching and just even hacking like in Facebook groups and stuff. What do people create Facebook groups around? Is it solving, Lyme's disease, or is it, I've been in mold toxicity groups lately. Everybody's looking for supplements and to help them detox their body from molds, because this is a new discovery how our houses are all filled with mold. And or even, somebody did solve this one problem or an offshoot of that. Dave Asprey, the bulletproof guy, he created bulletproof coffee beans that are mold free. Well, nobody knew that they were even drinking moldy coffee. They didn't know that beans could grow mold on them. And that's actually a really common thing. And here he came educating people about how you can be putting extra molds in your body by drinking moldy coffee. So he came out with this product, and, he's got a whole line of things, but that's $100+ million brand now, by solving that one problem. Like, nobody knew that there was mold in coffee, and he brought out that product, educated them, and solved that problem. Kaboom. So that's just a simple example of a passionate audience. So his audience would be, people who are either trying to solve that problem, or they would be considered, biohackers. They're trying to, help their bodies perform at optimal levels.
I see. So, for example, I could almost hear people saying, well, do I have to build a multi-million-dollar business? Do I have to think that that's what my goal is? Or would it be okay to satisfy a desire I have to fill a need and see where God takes it? Because I'm guessing not every idea that you've had always turns into gold.
Yeah, I would say that, and that's happened to me before, right? It's happened where, like with Savvy Musician Academy, I never intended for it to be a multi-million-dollar business. I just wanted to help my family. That was as big as my aspirations were. With Mythology candles, that was a whole other thing. I definitely intended for that one to go big, but I would say, sure, you can do that. But I would also challenge people, because 95% of the time I see people just think too small, and they're really like limiting their potential for what they could do. So I definitely, and I think that comes from some beliefs about money, some beliefs about success, some beliefs about what would please God or not. And so I definitely challenge them on thinking too small. But I mean, if you just want to get going and test the waters, I just call that an experiment, right? Like, let's do an experiment and engage that experiment and see what the reaction is. I'm a huge fan of that. And then if there's potential, start setting some goals. And so I just take it from there.
So there's the music business, there's the candle business, there's the teaching coaching business. Have I left anything out?
Those are the main ones. I am starting just like more of a general social media for myself, just teaching business in general. So people can find me on Instagram. It's real Leah McHenry, where I'm just talking more about building a product-based business. So I'm always trying to just reach a specific audience that I can help. So it's not officially like a thing yet, though.
Right. Okay. How many of your customers, clients, have you ever seen face to face, or is it mostly an online relationship?
In the academy, the Musician Academy, that's 100% virtual. And our Mythology candles business, we manufacture in person, but all of our customers are online as well. We're selling everything online. There's no in-person, there's no storefronts, there's no nothing.
And do you constantly reevaluate if you have targeted your audience correctly?
Yes, I think it's pretty dialed in for the most part, but it can always improve. Yeah.
So you said something before that I think is worth discussing. A lot of people read that the Bible is against money, and they say the Bible says the love of money. Well, they don't realize that it's the love of money rather than money. And really what we want is families to build wealth, and wealth is actually more than money. Like in your case, I would say whatever your bank account looks like is part of your wealth, but the relationship you have with your family, working together, the relationship you have with the people who work for you, that's wealth, that's community. And I think people, as you said, narrow it down to it's always just about dollars and cents.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because, well, the thing about revenue and just basing it on that. Well, first of all, the government takes half of it. So there goes that. So you definitely don't want to define wealth by what's in your bank account alone. That's very depressing. So even with success. So outside of that, I mean, we're thinking about how can we leave an inheritance to our kids? This is a very difficult era of time that we live in where we're taxed on everything at every single point. On everything you do, you're taxed on this, even inheritances, and it's evil. So we're trying to think like we have a major disadvantage in many ways compared to our grandparents and in previous generations where you actually got to keep what you earned for the most part. So that makes it more difficult. We have to go more extreme to bigger lengths to ensure that we can actually leave that inheritance to our kids. So that's going to come down to like really good money management, which we're still learning, in other investments and relationships. Obviously, like the things we're teaching our kids now, that's going to affect generations to come because they'll have been raised in a certain kind of home with a certain kind of culture, and they're going to raise their kids a certain way. We understand the generational impact of this, what we're doing, as opposed to the rest of the world. They only think about themselves, and when they die, that's it. Everything's gone. We understand there's a much bigger impact worldwide, what we're doing through our customers, through all the hires and the staff that we have, the impact we're making on their lives, and then our kids being raised in this. So wealth is definitely much bigger than what, your cash flow that's happening every month.
Right. So I spent a lot of time going through your websites, reading your blogs, because I think you get to know a lot about a person by the front face that they have. What biblical principles govern you in terms of, in the face of like these obstacles, like you work really hard, you do really well, and then half of it goes to not someone or an entity that's helped you. Actually, they're part of the obstacles you have to jump over. How much do you think now that you see in a much more, let's say, clear way what happens with business, does anything in your being a Christian and having a biblical worldview give you the impetus to say, we've got to correct this and maybe put some of your efforts there since you so clearly see the problem?
Are you referring to like politically, like with the taxes and that kind of thing?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I mean, we want to make an impact. And even just with like all the election stuff going on, both in Canada and there's just corruption in every facet of our society right now. I feel very strongly the Lord just saying, you just build. I'll take care of the bad guys. You build, you focus on hiring, you focus on relationships, you focus on making the best products that you can possibly make and making the biggest impact you can make. I will take care of these bad guys. So that's one thing that I feel strongly about. So I can sleep like a baby at night, no matter who is elected or who is president. It doesn't matter.
Right.
My commission is the same. So that's a bonus for us. The rest of the world, some people are crying right now. They're literally depressed, suicidal. But Christians, we have a hope. We know what the future is. So get to work. Basically, that's how my theology informs my daily actions.
Right. And the interesting part about that, and I think I could say the same thing, it's so easy for people to think because you're prominent and you're out there that you have no problems, and that there aren't times where you see doubt coming into your perspective and you realize you've been walking by sight rather than by faith. But what really, I think, has us kindred in our views is that we're about building. We're not going to change national politics from our home, but what we can be doing, and what you're doing, and which I know lots of homeschooling Christian families are doing, is like building an alternate business structure. Hopefully someday we'll have an alternate healthcare structure so that you don't have interference between you and your medical person, but the government is saying you have to do this or that. So I think the idea of building is huge, and that's really what Christian Reconstruction is all about.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
So talk about what it was like when you said you were struggling, and I remember we talked many times in the midst of your struggle. How did your husband react to becoming part of the Leah business thing? And how did you maintain a business relationship as you attempted to maintain a biblical marital relationship?
Well, I'm really smiling when you're asking me this question because it's been a challenge from a marriage perspective, but being business partners too, and it all stemming from Leah's brain. It was an odd thing, but something that really helped us was this quiz we took. It wasn't like a Myers-Briggs thing. It was a business leadership style quiz that somehow we came across with a book called the Synergist Quiz. And there's a Synergist book, and it's by a guy named Les McHenry. Program is called Predictable Success. And we kind of had an epiphany after the first launch of our academy. And that was, we found out that it was just more about our natural wiring, in that Leah is off the charts visionary, and Steve is what they would call an operator. And in this system, there's really 4 types of business leadership. There's the synergist, which is really the person who gets along with everybody. They're very like kumbaya, just get along with everyone. You have the processor. Those are the people who just love spreadsheets and they kind of micro analyze everything, but they keep things very orderly. Then you've got the operator, who is the check things off the list person. They really are the implementer, and they just like to get stuff done, but they don't currently come up with the ideas. Then you have the visionary, and that's the person who always has the greatest idea every 5 minutes. So so we found out, okay, so maybe our marriage is going to look different than we thought it did, or at least in terms of making money. And that is that Leah's really good at making money, and Steve's really good at maybe managing it and maybe growing it, and also implementing Leah's ideas. So we ended up, it was a weird paradigm shift, because I had always thought, oh, well, if the man is going to lead, then it has to be his idea. And I just, the Lord just humbled us and said, that's not always how it works. It could be different for every couple. And so we have just, God just blew through all of our preconceived ideas that way. And we still have we have a traditional relationship, but we just really both had to grow a lot in maturity in order to see the potential for our marriage. And after that quiz, we started getting along a lot better, funny enough.
Well, good. I'll try to find a link to that. And then when I post this, I'll include that as well.
Yeah, it is such a light bulb moment for people. Even though it's a business leadership quiz, it is very helpful to just understand your spouse in that way. It'll make things, it makes so much sense.
Well, when you think about what economics really is, economics is the managing of the household. Unfortunately, people thought home economics meant learn how to sew, learn how to cook, which of course, both things are very important, but it's also how to manage. And I really like what you said in terms of if somebody is an idea person and their spouse, and if it's a husband, isn't an idea person, rather than either saying, well, I can't express my ideas because God put him as the head. God did put him as the head. Organizationally, in a marriage, the husband is the head. But as Rushduni used to say, the husband's the king to the prime minister. In other words, they really are a team. It's not like, well, if somebody, has the position higher up, structurally speaking, that somehow or other it doesn't work. We know that the Trinity has 3 persons in one God, and they don't fight and argue with each other. So we could do the same.
Yeah, exactly. And if you think, most presidents, most kings, they have advisors around them, and a lot of them never make a decision without consulting their advisors. And it's just people get so hung up with the leadership thing. But really, God's design is the best. And sometimes we put man-made ideas into God's structure, and those never really work out very well. So
that is so true.
That's where, yeah.
I was just going to say, and I've said this a lot, people who sit through my classes have heard this a lot. The word patriarchy has been hijacked and caricatured to the point that if you say it, it almost means that you're for women being dragged across the floor with their hair and, told not to do this and not to do that. Again, I'll quote Rushdoony. He points out that a patriarch is the one who's responsible for the family, the past, the present, and the future. And the patriarch is much more of a servant leader than he is, some sort of dictator. And when the people of God allow the enemies of God to formulate the meanings of these words, they do a disservice to themselves and to the scripture. We are a people of order, but we're also a people of gifts. And I always like to tell people the two become one flesh, but they're not now one person. They still remain two people.
Yeah. And that's important because I know a lot of the crazies out there and the critics would try to critique and say that, women are trying to find their identity in their husband. That is not biblical.
Not at all. Nor is a woman trying to find her identity in her gender. We find our identity in Jesus Christ.
That's right. Amen.
Yes. Okay. Now, and I don't necessarily want you to go into detail, but I know that there have been many times in your Christian walk that you've had to deal with family members who did not appreciate your stance on things. And we'll just leave it at that. When you became successful by the world's standards, did they change their attitude towards you, or did you find that maybe they started respecting your point of view more?
No, they didn't. So I don't know. I mean, I have always tried to be me, but I guess sometimes I don't know. I don't know what to say about that other than I think that pride comes before a fall. And so we better all stay humble.
Let's say there's somebody who would like to talk with you, like to spend some time picking your brain. Obviously, the worker is worthy of her hire. What's your setup if people do want to utilize you as a coach or a mentor?
Well, I've got a new Instagram account. They can find me. It's at Real Leah McHenry. I'm on Facebook as well, although I try to keep that more for friends and family. So they can go there. I have a website, a newer website, leahmchenry.com. And so they can go there and check things out. I'm kind of focused on helping people in the future launch product-based businesses. So I'm actually working on a course right now to help people learn my research methods and how to launch a product and get it successful as fast as they can. And I think we're in an opportunity right now that we've never seen before in terms of e-commerce. And so that's my passion at the moment.
Well, very good. How about, let's get back to music. Do you see more music in your future?
Yeah, so I tried to do my songwriting on the weekends as time allows, and if we're not outside with the kids at the park or whatever. So I'm continuing my writing process. And this year I don't have plans to release an album, but I'm just starting the process of writing and seeing where it takes me. So no pressure at the moment, but yeah, I'll definitely release more music.
Well, you're probably going to be more pressure on yourself than anyone anyway.
Yes, too ambitious for my own good sometimes.
So if you had to say that there was one particular song that you have written that sums you up the best and have recorded, what would that one be?
Oh, goodness. I have to choose from all the songs I've released.
Uh-huh.
Okay, well, the first one that comes to mind would be Edge of Your Sword or Lion Arises from the album called The Quest, which you can find on Spotify and everywhere else you find music.
I was going to guess that because, like I said, I spent time and I listened The Edge of Your Sword, and I thought, wow, I get what she's saying there, or at least I think I get what she's saying. So, and I know I can link to the where you could hear it prior to purchasing it. But I like your videos and how you interpret that. Do you do those yourself or do you outsource those?
I definitely outsource. I'm not any kind of graphic designer or videographer person at all. I just focus on the music and marketing the music. But yeah.
Yeah, because they're pretty impressive.
Thanks. Yeah. These days, so I mostly do lyric videos because I don't haven't really had time to do music videos. Are kind of expensive, big production. I'll do in the future, but lyric videos are really easy to produce and they're ready in a few days. So you can hire a company and they'll just do it for you. And if any of your kids listening are into video editing or that kind of thing, there's quite a business around lyric videos. Musicians are always looking for a good lyric video.
Okay. So I'll make this my last question because I promised you I wouldn't take up too much of your time. As you progress in your business and you see that there are areas that you should know more about, but you don't necessarily have time to do, like you said, video editing, do you then encourage your children to pick an area, or even your husband to pick an area to learn about so that they can be part of what you need? And then instead of outsourcing a particular thing, another family member can do it.
Yeah, that's starting to happen with my son, who's turning 15. He is definitely getting into the video editing world. He's got his own little YouTube channel where he records Minecraft animations. He does animating. Mm-hmm. So we're starting to utilize him for certain things of our business, editing and so forth. But we're not pressuring him to like suddenly level up to a certain skill level we need. So we utilize our kids if we can, and if not, then we will outsource. And so it's like a low pressure situation.
And are all your employees local to you, or are some of them in different parts of the world?
Yeah, we have, depending on the business. So our virtual academy, the Savvy Musician Academy, that's 100% virtual, and they're all over the States. We've had people around the world, depending on where they are. And then Mythology Candles, all of our candle crew is local. So we're actually hand pouring, manufacturing locally in Linden, Washington. And then some of us are virtual. So we've got about 5 of us are on the virtual side of things. So we have a content writer in the UK. We have, our ads guy is in Vancouver over here. So yeah, we're spread out.
Okay. Well, you're helping the economy. You're helping people have work, and knowing you, they get a good dose of what you believe. And so along the way, hopefully they're also growing.
Yes. Sometimes I'll give a little spiel. And by the way, we hire based on skill and qualification. They don't have to agree. We don't have to match our beliefs about things with everything. Uh-huh. But I do, sneak certain things in there. I know, especially in the Washington area, a lot of our employees they're coming from this extreme liberal city, very, very liberal. And so they bring with them those views. And a lot of them probably have preconceived ideas about even just profit, that profit is bad and big corporations are bad and everything, So I've given spiels before in our meetings about why profit is a good thing and why a business needs profit. And when we're more profitable, that creates more opportunity for you. And so I try to present it in a way where they understand that there's actually a win-win. A customer isn't going to spend money unless they actually think it's worth it to them. So it's a win-win exchange there. They're exchanging their money for our product because they agreed that it was worth that. And then our business is profitable. We're able to hire, we can give raises, we can give bonuses. So just introducing some of those concepts to some of our liberal employees is kind of it's fun. It's a joy to be able to just be able to educate a little bit. And they're like, oh, opportunity for me. Good.
Exactly. I think especially if people have gone through training in socialism, which most public education is, they are always counting on the fact that the good works will be done by the government taking money from the rich guys, as opposed to doing a good service for people, being compensated for it, and then having excess money that you can go out and do good where you think good should be done. I think a lot of people transfer presuppositions once they see how it actually works. And since too many people spend too much time in higher education, they've never gotten the opportunity to even see it. So they believe what they've been told, that the government will take care of everybody.
That's right. And we actually implement a lot of transparency. We actually share our actual revenue numbers every single week in our team meetings. And I don't think that's something that a lot of businesses do, where we're sharing with, it doesn't matter what position you hold in the company, you know how much the business is bringing in, so that they're also motivated to help it succeed, so that they're creating opportunities for themselves and upward mobility. Like, we want to promote them. And so we tell them that regularly. So it's really fun.
That's great. Okay, one last question. I think I said that before, but this will be it. So when you were talking about the 4 different types in a business, I suppose it could work in any other organizational thing. If it's ministry that doesn't necessarily have financial gain as its goal, but service or however you're going to do it. Do you think it's worthwhile to examine your children and say, is this a visionary? Is this an operator? Is this a processor? Or do you think that early on, if people were to appreciate all the different roles, that it's not just a one per person? It's not like a stagnated thing that, if you were more in one way, could you develop in the other? Or do you think it pretty much is you are what you are?
Yeah, actually, in the book, he talks about how synergism is actually a learned trait. Now, some people fall out of bed and they're already a synergist. They're just wired that way. But everybody needs to learn to become synergistic. And so and that's the way you prevent from killing each other in any, in a marriage, in a business setting, in a ministry setting, because these different roles, you have a natural wiring. And of course, everybody's they're spread out across all 4 of them, right? So you can have different levels of them. When you do the quiz, they give you a breakdown. Oh, you're 500 of visionary, 200 of processor, 60 synergist or whatever. So yes, you can learn to adopt some of those things. And those numbers will change according to like the season of life you're in and what you're working on. So I've had times where I was really having to act as an operator in the business. I was the only one who could do X, Y, and Z. So I had a higher operator score at the time. But when I'm really freed up and I've got a team in place to take care of certain things, I'm off the charts visionary. Like, I'm all visionary, and I'm over 600, whatever. And so that's really my natural wiring when I'm not having to operate in those other things. I think it's just, all these things are just a tool. You shouldn't be defined by them, but they can be helpful tools. And
right.
For me, I can start to identify in my children, I think they've got, a processor tendency. Okay, cool. Well, I can help. This makes sense for what they're drawn to, what their propensities are. And so I was already able to detect my son is off the charts visionary. He's a creative. He's very introspective. He's this crazy piano player that, I never even wanted him to get into classical, and he's just learning these incredible pieces. Stuff like that. It just is a helpful tool. Don't ever be defined 100% by it. But at the end of the day, those 4 different types, they really need each other. And there's a reason God has wired people in these different ways, because you need them. And actually, every successful business or ministry operation needs all 4 types to succeed and get off the ground. So we need each other.
Yeah, well, and it goes back to the principles of that we're supposed to be in community. We're supposed to be regularly with each other. And what I tell people, because my husband and I have been married 45 years, and out here in California, that's like a milestone. Now, I remember growing up, people who had 60-year anniversaries or 70-year anniversaries, right? But 45 seems to be big here. And the question is, well, how did you do it? And it's right there in the Lord's Prayer, forgiving trespasses, because when you spend enough time with anybody, count on it, they will trespass against you and you will trespass against them. And you really got to get over it and learn how not to ignore it, but to settle it and move on. And I think that the synergistic personality is someone who can help smooth the waters when they get really turbulent.
Yeah, and those people are really necessary in an organization, because actually, I just recommend get the book, The Synergist, too. It's very good. He explains all this, but visionaries and processors clash. If you just put those 2 people alone in a room, they really will clash. So they either need to be, grow in their maturity and adopt more synergism, or you've got to have a synergist personality in there, just kind of calming the waters, like you said. Right. So yeah, very useful stuff.
Well, great. So I'm going to let you go through all the places. If people might be interested in hearing your music, give that URL and go through the whole litany of it so people will know where to find you.
Okay. Here we go. So if you want to find my music, it's considered Celtic metal. So if you think of like Lord of the Rings and Enya and Metallica or Evanescence kind of in a blender. That's what you get. So that's you can go to leahmusic.net. That's my music website. SavvyMusicianAcademy.com is our academy where we have self-paced courses for independent musicians on teaching them how to market their music online without a label. And then mythologycandles.com, that's my sister brand, that's the candles. And leahmchenry.com is more for the business coaching stuff.
Okay.
After our interview was complete, I asked Leah if I might share the song Edge of the Sword, and she gave me an okay to include it here.
Every heartbeat is
Feel free to comment on this and any other topics, Out of the Question podcast at gmail.com, and I'll catch you next time.
Thanks for listening to Out of the Question. For more information on this and other topics, please visit chalcedon.edu.